Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, you're good to go.
I want to thank everyone so much for joining us. I can't believe how far away people have are joining us from, and I saw Cannon Beach, and I lived near Cannon Beach for many years, so that's exciting. And I saw England, and familiar with England, so thank you so much for being here. So Birdability is a movement to bring the joys of birding to everyone. And Tucson Audubon would like your help to figure out how to best implement and bring birdability to Tucson and to Southeast Arizona, so that we can bring the joys of birding to everyone here, especially given our very unique environment and magnificent bird life. So a couple years ago, around 5 years ago, we did put on our website some details about accessibility and birding sites around Tucson and Southeast Arizona. So that was the beginning of bringing birds to everyone here. And now we'd like to make this a much more robust initiative, and part of what Tucson Audubon's work is this year is to really bring the joys of birding to, like we've said, to everyone. And so to do that, we would like to begin with some site assessments. So the information that we have on our website, we'd like to make sure that that is very detailed, completely accurate, and up to date, so that people can find the best spots easier and feel comfortable going there and getting there, so that they can enjoy their time birding there. We'd also like to make sure that we can include walks that are accessible and manageable and easy for everyone to get to, and longer field trips. And looking forward to next year, we'd like to include festival talks with Virginia Rose, and we'll meet her just shortly. Through our Birdathon fundraiser earlier this year, we did raise funds that we can dedicate to the Birdability Initiative this year. So we're very invested. And I'd like to go over just briefly what today's agenda will be, and let you know that at the end, I'll put my contact information up. And we would love to have as many people as possible join us and create our Birdability team, and so that we can begin to really implement this initiative and do these site assessments and get our website updated. And so we would love to have everyone with all of your different talents and skills and passions. Everything will be a wonderful addition and contribution to our Birdability initiative. So first, I'll introduce Virginia in just a moment. We're very fortunate and honored that she could be with us, and she's the founder of Birdability, and I'll let her tell her own story, but I'm very thankful that she can be with us and guide us through this. Virginia will share her presentation of her philosophy about Birdability, why it's important to her, and how it got started, and what the last 2 years have looked like since she began this, really as a woman in a wheelchair who loved birding and wanted to bring it to other people who were mobility challenged. And then Virginia will go over how these site assessments can be done. It's I was surprised at how easy and organized it already is, so that won't actually take too long. And then we'll open it up for questions and comments and discussion. And at point, I'd like to really be able to answer as many questions as possible and get as many concerns and comments as possible, so that we can get as many people on board. And then we'll put my contact information up, and I will be your contact if you'd like to join us. So like I said, I'll let Virginia tell her own story, but here's one quote from her that I'll open with, and then welcome Virginia. She said, "Birding gave me an exciting reason to explore nature in my wheelchair. And then I realized I could have the same motivating effect on others." So with that, please welcome Virginia Rose.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, everybody, for Zooming. You're brave souls. I wanted to give a big thank you to Tucson Audubon, and especially to Ruth and to Cynthia, who really picked up the ball and started running with it right away as soon as they heard about Birdability. And I was honored with an honorary membership to Tucson Audubon. And I am the envy now of my own Audubon chapter, Travis Audubon, here in Austin, Texas. So I just want to thank everybody again for coming on and being willing to figure out a way to help everybody enjoy the fantastic birding that we see, of course, in the Tucson area, but all over the country. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead to my PowerPoint, and I'll see you after. Okay. All right. So I want to begin with a question. The question is, when we say the mobility challenged, who do we mean? People in the past have responded with, oh, people who use wheelchairs or scooters or canes or other devices. And that's right. But I'm asking us to look further. Let's remember that in 10 or 20 or 30 years, each of us is going to want to continue birding. Let's not think of our mobility challenged audience as something other. Our audience includes our future selves. My grandmother birded into her 90s. My mom is still birding at 84. Let's keep that in mind as we explore. Also, just to reiterate, this good fortune has been bestowed on me only because I love birding, because I use a wheelchair, and because I want other people with mobility challenges to experience the same joy I have found in birding. Oh, and 2 years ago, I just happened to land smack dab in the middle of a national movement to make birding equitable, diverse, and inclusive. Lucky me. My mission then is to show others with mobility challenges the benefits of birding, the possibilities, the learning, the successes, the beauty, and in so doing share a greater sense of freedom and community and joy. Our objective today, participants will learn about birdability, the philosophy, the steps I took, and the steps they can take to make birding more inclusive for those with mobility challenges. Let me begin and end today's program with letters I've received which best capture the reason for Birdability. Hello, Virginia. I've been reading about and listening to your Birdability project with interest. My wife, Lynn, is now facing drastically reduced mobility due to progressively arthritic knees. We are both 67 in our 8th year of birding together and very close to retirement. After doing some research, we've determined that using a wheelchair to bird may be the best option. We've been investigating parks in and around Montgomery County, Maryland. The best birding sites here are well known, and we are now assessing them for accessibility, as you have done in Austin, Texas. Your birdability project might be what we could do in retirement for birding and for disabled people in our current geographic area. Thank you for your efforts and time. Sincerely, Tim and Lynn Friedlander. I began birding 17 years ago when I was injured in a accident, was 14 years old in 1973, and I've used a wheelchair ever since. When I started birding when I was 44 in 2003, I was a high school English teacher in Austin, Texas. And driving home one day from school, I was listening to NPR when I heard an announcement for a presentation sponsored by Travis Audubon about the breeding success of the house finch. I attended that evening and was hooked. Why? I have no idea. But before I even made it home that evening, I called my mother and said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me I was a nerd? My life would have been so much easier." I immediately joined Travis Audubon and signed up for every class and field trip. I couldn't get enough. I met wonderful people along the way who encouraged me to go and do whatever I could. At no time did a Travis Audubon leader tell me no. These were my people. My new walking birding companions just followed my lead, and I am to this day very proud of them and grateful. One leader, Cliff Shackelford, did not skip a beat when the group encountered a tall set of steps to a rookery. He swung his binoculars onto his back, picked me up, and said over his shoulder to the next guy, "Get her chair, dude." And off we went, no questions asked. On an East Texas trip, leaders Sheila Hargis and Lori Foss deftly hoisted me, chair and all, over a huge tree across our path. Another leader, Jeff Patterson, has for 10+ years been my right-hand birding man, spotting me over roots and rocks and rutted roads, in and out of trucks and golf carts, identifying birdsong all the while. And finally, Dr. Birdie, Byron Stone, out bushwhacking in a central Texas field with my fellow sparrow classmates, encircled a LeConte's sparrow and carefully delivered it all the way to me. I was sitting in my chair on a dirt road, unable to join them in the field. The lifer landed 6 feet away from me on a barbed wire fence, giving me great looks. I gave him great looks too. But birding in a wheelchair has added benefits. At the end of a birding day, I do not come home with a list of birds. I do not just come home with a list of birds, happy memories of conversations and beautiful views. I come home with a very real feeling of accomplishment and pride. I come home empowered. Let me tell you why. Start with the difficulty. Committing to a trip, not knowing if I can do it, is scary. Not knowing in advance the obstacles I will face is hard. Making sure not to impose on the itinerary or others' experience is of paramount importance to me. Each trip requires me to figure some things out. Let me share some usually hilarious situations with you. Let's start with parking. I use a van with a ramp, requiring an 8-foot passenger side clearance. I cannot tell you how many times I've parked, transferred into my chair, only to realize that my ramp is heading off a cliff, into a fence, into a giant rosemary bush, a tree, a very deep puddle, and so on. Sometimes I go for it, and sometimes I start over. And then there are those hazardous roadside birders. You know who you are. Raise your hands. One side offers traffic, The other deep grassy ditches when you're getting out on the side of a road with a ramp. By the time I figure all that out, birders are shouldering their scopes and headed back to their cars. Restrooms. The restrooms that are available are not often accessible. I am navigating all kinds of obstacles: curbs, fences, gates, cattle guards. Just think about that one for a minute. Yes, I can do it, but I don't know any other person in a wheelchair who can or would do such a stupid thing. And cow patties. For heaven's sakes, going for mountain plovers. The flock took flight once we ventured too close, and we followed. Once I realized I was wheeling over 50 yards of pasture each time, navigating around cow patties, I paused a minute, looked back at my vanishing van, and I thought, wait a minute here, what am I doing? Also, cow patties on your shoes is one thing. Cow patties in your hands is quite another. Then there's the dreaded gravel, rocks, roots, ruts, cactus thorns, flat tires, mud, and the well-meaning but completely ineffective efforts to make something accessible. Think boardwalks. Boardwalks with boards placed more than an inch apart, scary for skinny front wheels. Boardwalks with railings placed perfectly to obstruct my view. Boardwalks with steep grades that would land me in the creek if it weren't for the railings that obstruct my view. And of course, maintaining my independence throughout is imperative. But I am not complaining. My life's philosophy: difficulty and uncertainty lead to empowerment and joy. It is the main message to people with mobility challenges who do not know they are birders yet. It is also the message to everyone else. Talk birding, sitting alone in a forest, listening to and attempting to identify the beautiful vocalizations of the birds surrounding me. I was overcome with the joy of being alone in nature. The more birding I did, the more I expanded and understood my own abilities, physical and otherwise. Birding has brought me a serious and joyful experience, complete with a community willing to include me on every level. And with all that, a level of confidence, a solid sense of self, and a happiness I'd never known. That the best we can bring. Led leaders and joined the Tucson Audubon Board of Directors. I just decided to do my own birdathon named from Doris. I would bird
Virginia?
from parks in the Austin area and see as many birds as I could see. Yeah.
Hey, Virginia, just
SNP is
just
always
to
going to
interrupt,
zero here, and
you are
actually,
having some audio issues that are coming up. So
Okay.
Just wanted to make you aware of that. I don't know if there's other internet things running in your background or not, but hopefully we'll get you back on track here.
Do you think
Yeah, you sound good now. So we'll keep trying.
I wonder if I should change rooms.
Well, you sound good now. So hopefully it'll work out.
All righty. Thank you.
Totally up to you. Yeah.
All right. So in my birdability, I'm going to be birding dawn to dusk, 5 accessible parks, and I definitely wanted to go independently. I determined that I wanted to go alone so that people could know we can do it alone. Francis Serbins, the former president of Travis Audubon, insisted I contact the media. I was very reluctant, but I did finally contact the Austin American Statesman to tell them about my birdathon. The paper did a feature, and then the local TV station did a feature. The National Audubon in New York City contacted me and asked if a photojournalist could fly down to Austin and follow me on my birdathon. It was a wild and wonderful day. I birded for 12 hours in 5 accessible parks. I wheeled at least 10 miles. I saw 52 bird species with 1 local journalist and 1 Manhattan photojournalist in tow, whom I drove to the airport at 9 o'clock that night. I'd like to say I would have seen more birds if I weren't so busy entertaining journalists. I did the same birdathon last year without journalists in tow, and okay, I came home with 65 birds, 12 of which were migrating warblers. Since that day, I've been hard at work turning birdability into a real initiative. I began my blog, birdability.com. I began updating the accessible Austin birding sites. I identified local groups in Austin whose members have mobility challenges. I started monthly birdability walks. Travis Audubon added birdability to its website and calendar. I contacted the Lone Star Paralysis Foundation and Austin Adaptive Sports, and the 3 of us are working to get birdability programming at a disabled camp in town. I contacted Rehab Without Walls, which is an innovative organization that helps their clients experience therapy anywhere other than a gym. So my rehab happens on a birding trail. I now lead quarterly walks for Rehab Without Walls. I began identifying and contacting birding festivals. In terms of festivals and accessibility, we have some work to do. In many cases, the terrain and topography just make it impossible. It's also difficult to keep a wild spot wild and accessible, and I appreciate that challenge. But in some situations, a mobility challenged birder could follow the inaccessible vans to a birding site and perhaps bird just a portion of the site. In Austin, I know the golden cheek warblers in the parking lot of an otherwise completely inaccessible site. And in the conversation that I was listening to earlier with Luke and another gentleman about the red-faced warbler, I got the red-faced warbler in a parking lot on Mount Lemon. So, with respect to festivals, I would like to see festival officials invite a mobility challenged birder to visit their sites, identify the accessible sites, and get those sites on a festival schedule with a mobility challenged leader. I think officials would be surprised. Remember, most mobility challenged birders aren't expecting to do everything. We just want to do as much as we can. My motto: you won't know until you go. No one can know what any one mobility challenged person can do. The mobility challenged birder won't know either until she or he goes. That's the whole point. A loud shout out to Mary Gustafson, the chair of the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival in Texas. Mary had the foresight over 3 years ago to bring mobility challenged birders into her festival. The Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival is one of the first, if not the first, birding festival in the country to offer mobility challenged walks. The leader of those particular walks, Lori Foss, brought me in as a leader in training 2 years ago. Last year, I received an invitation to handle those walks on my own. I was to handle them this year as well, were it not for COVID. Surrounded by amazing international birders who've been leading for decades is intimidating, let me tell you. I just keep telling myself, no one can bird in a wheelchair like I can. In 2018, I met Dorothy and Ann, both of whom use rolling walkers. Both women were interested in seeing birds, of course, but they were as interested in discussing wheelchairs and tires, vans, backpacks and scopes, coffee cups that are easier to carry in wheelchairs. I love hearing these virtual strangers have these earnest conversations about being mobility challenged. It's more than about birds. The last few mornings of the festival were cold and wet and muddy, but as usual, very fun. The birdability walks in Austin have been going great guns. My first one was in May 2018. I had one taker. My second was in October in 2018. My third was in November 2018. The fourth was in January 2019. The fifth was in February 2019. So you can see the idea is growing. I also have to say, a bunch of walking people are infiltrating my mobility challenged walks. At one point I said, no walking people are allowed on this walk. Everybody laughed. The last walk, the first and hopefully not the last in 2020. It was a beautiful day in January in Austin, Texas. I think we came home with 36 birds, 4 different woodpeckers. I finally came up with a 7-pronged nationwide approach. First, find folks with mobility challenges in Audubon chapters. Second, find accessible birding sites. Third, find people with mobility challenges through various support groups. 4, find the most accessible birding festivals and schedule accessible walks. 5, get birdability programming at kids' disabled camps nationwide. Number 6, get birdability programming at rehabilitation facilities. Number 7, get birding stations established at assisted living centers nationwide. I'm working with Brookdale in Texas as we speak. Very exciting. Let me include another letter I received, this one from Ann Wasser in Illinois about 1.5 years ago. Dear Virginia, I ran across birdability in the program for the Audubon Convention, and I wanted to ask you more about it. We won't be able to attend the convention, but I love the idea of what you're doing and would like to figure out a way to effectively implement something like that in our community. Thank you so much for your great idea and for making nature more accessible to all. Best, Ann. At some point in the last 2 years, as I continued to receive inquiries from people all over the country interested in birdability, I determined to enlist every one of them as birdability captains. No one said no. At present, birdability has 18 captains representing 13 states and 3 countries. Captains and I interact frequently, and it has been so satisfying to introduce people within different Audubon chapters countrywide. I continue to receive correspondence from private birding places in the country looking to become more accessible. In 2018, I received an email from a project manager with New York City Parks interested in making those spaces more accessible. In early 2019, Hawk Mountain Sanctuary in Pennsylvania invited me to speak. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is a beautiful 2,600-acre wild bird sanctuary established in 1934. What a wonderful experience, an amazing sanctuary. In the summer of 2019, National Audubon invited me to conduct a workshop at the convention in Milwaukee. Of the many things I wanted to communicate, perhaps one of the most important was this.
You're breaking up again.
Birdability and learn about. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I think that's a good thing to, like, when it happens, to just kind of take a break and let it catch back up. So I think you're good now, though.
All right. So sorry about that.
It's all right.
Let's educate ourselves about what already works and learn about what we really need before we begin asking people to bring in the bulldozers. My thought is that once we've organized a real live mobility easier, people want to help. To that end, I created a handout entitled Access Considerations. The access considerations address what I consider to be the 9 most important points in a park or at a birding site. First, the parking is manageable. I use that word manageable because a very important caveat is to be understood, which is my philosophy, of course, remember, is that we won't know until we go if a place is going to be accessible for us. I very much want to encourage the spirit of exploration on the part of people who have various challenges. And I wouldn't begin to suppose that I would be able to understand all the challenges that various people have. So that's why I use the word manageable loosely. A handicap parking place for vans, which includes a side space of 8 feet, preferably not on a slope or filled with potholes. Number 2, the slope is manageable. Slope is notoriously difficult to gauge. I understand that. But I do want us to have some ADA dimensions in mind when we start making some of these decisions. 1 to 12 for ramps, or 1 to 20 for other parts of the trail. For example, on a ramp, if you're managing a 1-inch vertical rise, you need 12 inches horizontally. Number 3, the surface is manageable. Many birding sites with hard-packed dirt paths work beautifully until it rains. Sidewalks and asphalt are great until the asphalt starts degrading. Crushed granite paths are okay, depending on how hard-packed they are. I think part of the problem is that walking people are making more of the decisions about surfaces than people who are actually mobility challenged. Number 4, gates are manageable. ADA requires a minimum opening of 32 inches, but my chair is only 22 inches wide. Scooting underneath a bar posing as a gate can be problematic for some, but not for me. Number 5, railings on boardwalks or bridges are placed to optimize, not obstruct, the eye line of a seated person. My eye line is at 3 feet, so the railing needs to be below that, ideally at 2 to 2.5 feet. Number 6, 0 steps. So many walking people say, well, there's only 1 small step. That said, generally 1 small step is manageable for a manual chair, but only with help from walking people. Number 7, blinds are manageable. The entrance is wide enough, 32 inches minimum. The viewing windows are low enough, the opening starting at 2 to 2.5 feet from the floor. The interior benches need to be movable. Interior needs to be large enough for wheelchairs to maneuver. Number 8, there are benches available at approximately every 1/8 of a mile. And these are for people who may not use wheelchairs, but who may have grumpy joints. Number 9, the bathroom is manageable. All of the dimensions for an accessible bathroom are listed on my access considerations handout. All right, so after my presentation at National Audubon, Elizabeth Todd and Ryan Hobbs approached me about creating a GIS interactive map to identify and pin accessible birding sites for people with mobility challenges. Within 5 months, using my Access Considerations handout, which identified 9 areas of consideration, the two of them created the GIS map. In January of this year, she sent me a draft. On March 1st, National Audubon did a soft launch to a handful of relevant users, including me, the Birdability captains in 12 different states, and some other Audubon staff. On March 12th, Audubon launched the Birdability map to Audubon chapters nationwide. Within 1 week, the map had 100 new accessible sites. Happy day. I'm going to back up here and show you how easy it is to complete this survey. So you can go to birdability@audubon.org/GIS, and there are a number of other ways to get to this site. So on any device, you can go to a birding site. You can determine the pins that are already on the map. These pins all indicate accessible birding sites that people have put on in the last 5 months. It's so amazing. So let's say you're at a birding spot and you want to submit your space. So you'll go to the site, you'll click on Submit Your Birdability Review. And I'm going to, Austin, Texas has an amazing purple martin roost, and we have parties usually every summer with this. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in the purple martin party as an event, and it's happening at a place we call La Frontera right now. Of course, we get to the purple martins, the purple martins are the ones who tell us where the party is going to be. So I'm going to type in La Frontera. That's just a shopping center. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to where it says find address or place, and I'm just going to type in Hobby Lobby, because the purple martins are in all of the trees in front of the hobby round. So I noticed that you don't have to have a hard and fast address. Length of the trail, I'm doing a parking lot. Tell us about the parking experience. And then we have all these parking options. So I'm simply going to write, there's a handicap parking place which has room for a ramp. I'm going to go to the next question. Tell us about the ramps and the trails. And I'm going to just say other, and then I'm going to be able to type in parking lot. I really want us to use the other box option in this survey, because the more subjective information we can get on the survey, the better it's going to be for people who are going to have all kinds of different challenges. The next question, tell us about the surface of the trail. And these are all the options that we have. So for a parking lot, I'm just going to say asphalt. And I'm going to go to the next question. The gates are manageable and large enough for a wheelchair to pass through. I'm going to put NA because that's not a problem with our parking lot. Railings on boardwalks, I'm going to say NA because that's not applicable here. Are steps present? No. Now I'm going to go to viewing blinds and I'm going to put NA. And then I'm going to go to benches and I'm going to say no benches. Tell us about the bathrooms. I'm going to say there are no bathrooms. Next, please include any additional information. And I'm just going to write, bring your own chair. Let me see if I can type. And hat. And then I'm going to hit submit. And once I've done that, I'm going to see that pin appear on our map. And at this point, now anybody anywhere can see that they can go to this parking lot and not have to worry with finding it inaccessible. Very exciting. All right, back to the PowerPoint, and I'm going to go on to the next slide. And just to let you know that National Audubon has created the Birdability Affinity Group and bird populations. It is an amazing process watching these interests converge and blossom into all kinds of wonderful. For the separate organizations and their specific participants, for the various communities and their members, and finally, for the birds. Most recently, Travis Audubon's own Kaylee and Nora designed a great map for the Austin birding area, which includes the 35+ accessible birding sites. Thank you, Kaylee and Nora, and a big shout out to Nicole and Judith and Kelsey and Eric of Travis Audubon for their unending support. As a segue to closing, I want to share another very poignant letter I received in 2018. Hello, Virginia. My name is Diane Allison. Travis Audubon kindly supplied your email to me. My friend and birding buddy of 43 years passed away in February at the age of 63. She suffered from a very progressive form of MS. I saw your story in this issue of Audubon magazine and felt an immediate connection. Allison and I had run into many of the obstacles that you spoke of in the birding radio interview that I listened to today. I would like to send you our story, which I wrote several years ago after our last big birding trip. We had hoped to find a way to share our story to encourage others with disabilities to travel and go birding. We thought we could share what we learned about accessibility and adaptability, both in places to bird, places to stay, and traveling with a disability. In her memory, I would like to become engaged in helping others enjoy our hobby and our love of nature. I am an experienced leader of bird walks, as well as giving talks, so I'm comfortable with people and sharing my passion for the birds. I'm a compiler for our local Christmas count and for the Pennsylvania migration count, and am known as the bird lady in my community. If you're interested, I can send you our story by email, and you can read over what we did through the 16 years with multiple sclerosis as our constant birding companion. After that, maybe we can talk more about how I might be able to help advance your efforts. Let me conclude this way. I consider every one of my birding experiences as an empowerment bead, and I feel like I'm stringing them into a beautiful life necklace. This is what I want to share with other mobility challenged people, an opportunity to collect these empowering experiences one at a time. I want people with mobility challenges to know that they can bird, that there are accessible birding places, and that Audubon chapters all over the country are just waiting to welcome them into amazing birding communities. I want them to experience the same freedom, empowerment, and pure joy that birding has brought me. It's the greatest happiness of my life, and I want to show them how to get it. Thank you so very much for your support. And let me just remind you, if you or anyone you know can benefit from Birdability, please contact me at info@birdability.com. And thank you, Tucson, for allowing me to be a part of Tucson Audubon. Thank you.
Virginia, that was fantastic. I know that's a huge challenge to me as someone who's not mobility challenged to think outside of myself and think about other people. I mean, we need to challenge each other to do that. And you certainly have done that for me. And I hope for everyone else here as the birding community looks to make things more accessible for everyone, outside of ourselves. So thank you, Virginia. Are there any questions that that you all might have for Virginia? You can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask as well.
Hey, this is Mia Hansen, Southern Arizona
Mia.
Adaptive Sports. Virginia, I'd like to thank you for presenting. Hey, and thanks to everybody who's on this call. We're a nonprofit that offers outdoor and indoor experiences for people. And I wanted to ask you, Virginia, have you found any resistance? We have a little bit from public park staff, say national parks and others who may be resistant to having wheels, especially power chairs, people who are using larger, fatter tires to get out on the trails. Have you had any resistance from anybody to allow what they might consider motorized vehicles, which they're really not, out on the trails?
Absolutely not.
Good.
Tell them to call me.
Well, that's great. It can be an issue sometimes, just to mention that, but we found that it really helps to involve your parks staff and your park rangers and others if you're planning an event that will include motorized wheelchairs especially, or larger types of mobility devices. So we're doing some of that here with Saguaro National Park East, and have led some trail hikes on trails that are meant to not have any wheels on them at all, and we're breaking through, but it can be a little bit tough. But thank you again for your talk today.
Oh, sure. And Mia, we just need to stay in touch, because when I do encounter, when I do encounter that kind of trouble, I'm going to call on you to help me navigate that.
Hey, Virginia, we do have a couple questions. So could you describe what a birding station would look like at an assisted living facility?
Yes, this has been just such a delightful occurrence. Sadly, I hadn't even thought about the importance of including people who are in assisted living situations, but a friend contacted my dad, and he sent her to me, and we started talking about what she wanted. And she said, I just want a bird feeder and a place where I can sit and watch birds. And so I just directed her to a Wild Birds Unlimited store here in town. I called them. To tell you the truth, I asked the Wild Birds Unlimited shop to do this sort of as a partnership with the assisted living center, because I thought, what a perfect alliance, right? And I couldn't get the Wild Birds Unlimited to get on board with it, but now I'm going to my Audubon chapter, and I'm saying, the Audubon chapters need to get on board with supplying birding stations to these assisted living centers. I mean, what a perfect fit, right? Yeah. So I just recommended that they buy one of those birding poles that has two handles that are easy, to put in the ground, and then to buy 2 squirrel-proof feeders. And then we are considering a water feature, but that's more problematic. So I've been out to the birding station at Brookdale, which is the center here in Austin, and it's wonderful. There's 3 or 4 people who have binoculars that their kids have given them so they can use the birding station. I mean, it's really catching on, and I just think it's another vital way for our community to reach out to everybody.
Thanks for that, Virginia. One last question here. Any advice about considerations for designing ramps at birding sites?
I think it would be really helpful to get in touch with the parks, talk to the people who are actually in charge of creating park accessibility ramps. You know, every park has its own accessibility officer. So find out who that accessibility officer is, go down, meet them, have a conversation, and tell them that you want to be involved in any of the trail making efforts that they're involved in. The guy that I work with in the Austin parks contacts me every single time. And I go down there, and it's, you know, at that point, I'm no engineer, but it's easy for me to tell him what I need. But he won't, or she won't know unless they see you in your wheelchair or with your stroller or your walker. He won't, or she won't know until you're there. So I think it's really important to be that person who shows up on site at the places where they're trying to make change. Someone who has a mobility challenge needs to be responsible for showing up.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Autumn, do you like to close us out?
Unmute. I would like to share my screen so that everyone can see my contact info. Did that do it? Oh, did that do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I seem to have lost, now I can't see anybody.
No, that's all right. You just see yours, but we see it.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us. And gosh, it would really help if I could see everyone. Do you know how I can do that, Luke?
How about you can stop sharing, and what I'm typing to everyone right now, we're going to make sure to have your information in the follow-up email.
Okay. Oh, great.
So that way you'll have it in your email, and with a link, go right to Autumn.
Perfect.
And I think the best, what Autumn's hoping, what we're hoping is that through this, we'll have people here on and really all over the country who want to get involved making this more of a, even more reality where we live. That open for Autumn?
Yes. And
Contact you?
yes, email me, and there's no limit to the people that can be involved. Like I said earlier, everyone is, there's so many skills and talents and passions that make up this forum here, and so we'd love to have as many people as possible join us. There's a lot to do, so there's a lot of different components to this, and there's a lot of different things we can have people help with, from writing to going out and assessing the trails. So depending on what your interests are, where you live, we can use your help.
Can I say another thing?
Please, yes.
Sure.
Thank you. I actually have two things to say. October is Disability Awareness Month, and the affinity group is in the process of creating little videos of people who have mobility challenges on the various trails across the country. And so I'm sure that Tucson can, you know, find someone who has a mobility challenge, and or else steal a wheelchair and put a walking person in it with some binoculars around their neck and take them down to Sweetwater and take a little video. I would also say, in respect to your comment about how many various things there are to do, you know, the goals, those 7 goals, can really help you determine all the different talents that we need. You know, to your point, Autumn, you know, there are so many different things that people can do to further the cause. The last thing I want to say is I'm working with Atterbury Wash right now. I love that birding spot, and it's perfect for people in wheelchairs as long as it hasn't rained. But there's a section getting to the actual walk that's virtually impassable. My sister always has to help me through it. But I think how nice it would be. I've actually approached Atterbury Wash and the city to try to get that improved. So anybody who knows anybody who has any pull with getting Atterbury Wash accessible, I would be forever grateful if you could pull whatever strings you have there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
stuff. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Virginia, for sharing your expertise and wisdom with. Greatly appreciate your presence, and Autumn for making this happen. And see all of you at other Southeast Arizona Birding Festival events this week. At 1 o'clock, we have our first Birding with a Purpose Cuckoo virtual birding tour. We're getting ready for that. And if you have any other questions about birdability or want to get involved, I'll be sending an email to you later today with reporting and links to connect with Autumn and Virginia. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Autumn.
The favorite
Thank
part
you.
where everyone gets to yell and scream and say thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, everyone. Have a nice
See you at
day.
1.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.